Brian said. Not to me, the she-bear replied. She is right. Kill the Freys. Where is Smalljan? Is he fighting with Snow? The Great Jon asked. None of your men are here. Or yours, Lord Karstark. Or the Tullys. Or any of the Riverlords. They could not join because the Freys held you hostage. Brian said. Then, how did Snow take the castle? Karstark said. The castle is not taken. Snow played a trick, but he has only a few hundred Stark men. Vance said. We need to escape, but there is another matter. Robert Peach dragged out a few more from the far side of the dungeon. Brian was shocked to see Sir Stephen, old, tired, hobbling and supported by two young men. She recognized Oliver, Rob's squire, but not the other, a boy of the same age. They looked like cousins, but everybody did at the twins. Sir Pewin followed, and his face was beaten and ashamed. Fucking Freys. Karstark spat. No, sir. These men tried to help us at the wedding. Stephen was wounded in the leg, defending me. And Pewin fought Hosteen for killing Lucas Blackwood. Robin Roger said. The old knight's arm was swollen black and smelled foul. But his brother attacked us at Seven Streams. I smashed a flagon of wine in his face to get free before I was knocked out by the back of an axe. Daisy said. That was Benfrey, not me. Pewin said. I swear I had no idea of my father's plans. They could all be liars. Lame Lothar is clever enough to put spies in the dungeon. How can we trust any Free after what Lord Walder has done? Willis said. They may be scum, but the Freys are Lord Edmure's bannermen. They answer to the Tullys. Mark Piper argued. The Freys betrayed the North. House Stark will decide their fate. If Robb Stark cannot, then Snow will. Daisy said. The Northmen clearly agreed. Now, can we get out of this place? We came down the staircase in the Great Hall. But Free Knights were defending that. We may have to fight our way through them. Brian said. There is another way out, that would avoid any guards. Pewin said. Past the armory. Arya Stark burned that one. Brian said. No, my lady. There is an old storeroom with a concealed postern gate. The exit is below the bridge footings, and leads to the Trident, under the crossing. It was built before the water tower, so that the Freys could attack any passing boats. Pewin said. Lead the way. But if this is a trap, I will pull the guts out of your body while you are alive. The Great Jon said cheerfully. The drawbridge was not the problem. Once lowered, that would be hard to raise again in any reasonable time frame. But the portcullis was an entirely different matter. The long tunnel had two portcullises, grated gates, plated with iron, mounted on vertical grooves that could be quickly raised or lowered. Attackers could be trapped between the two metal grills, and easily killed. Defenders could drop stones and boiling water through murder holes in the ceiling or shoot arrows and bolts from the slits and loops on the sides. The hoisting equipment, a winch, windlass and ropes, to raise and lower the gates would be located in the guardroom above the tunnel. And sometimes a guard could even smash a latch, and the portcullis would drop swiftly. Taking the guardroom was not the hard part. Enough soldiers had rushed to the Great Hall from the gatehouse that the enemy numbers had thinned out. But holding the guardroom against attacks from Freys in the gatehouse, barbican, and flanking towers would be difficult for 5 men and a dire wolf. Jon. Arya had found him, thanks to Balerion. All 4, Arya, Thoros, Beric and Gendry, had soot on their face. We burnt down the armory. I can tell. It was no use to tell Arya to keep safe. They were already near the guardroom. Safety came with action. Sir Andrew Tollett. I want you to approach the guards. Tell them that the Northmen were defeated, and that Lothar Free wishes them to come to the Great Hall. But my lord, I look nothing like a Free. The Tolletts of Grey Glen have no weasels or vultures as ancestors. Andrew said. Do you think we bloody look like Freys? Sander said. The hound wore a drab cloak and an ugly leather skullcap. The cowl and cap hid his scars but not his height. Clegane towered a whole head over any Free. Andrew was the shortest of the Vale Knights. Perhaps you could be a knight from a house sworn to the Freys. Beric said. And what are their sigils? Toilette asked doubtfully. You can be a fucking Hague. Black pitchforks. I stuck one up Donald Haig's arse in a melee. Clegane said. Perhaps I should accompany Sir Andrew as well. I will be a septon bringing good tidings. Thoros of MYR said. The two entered the guardroom. Cheers could be heard through the thick oak door on hearing news of the victory. A few soldiers strolled through the door, only for the Hound and John to kill them from behind. Ghost and Balerion rushed the guardroom, followed by Lord Beric with a flaming sword, Sir Michael and the other Vale Knights. And when the freemen attempted to raise the alarm or escape from the White Dire Wolf, Thoros and Andrew hacked at exposed necks and arms. In a few moments, the bloody work was done. That was not noble, Lord Snow. Thoros lamented. No, it was not. We are here for revenge, not to be celebrated in songs. John said. They sealed the doors, blocking them as much as possible with tables and doors. A rope and pulley system on the far west side of the room linked a counterweight to the drawbridge. Sir Michael and the Vale Knights lowered the bridge. At the same time, the Hound and Gendry put their backs, legs and arms to work on the windlass, lifting first one gate and then the other. John located the latch, in the center of the guardroom. He took out the Arok horn that Mage had given him last night. A long low blast rolled through the gatehouse, escaping the lowering drawbridge and echoing through the western shoreline. John turned back, and blew it again. The noise sounded through the castle, striking fear and dismay in the defenders. And then one last blast came from the war horn, deep, mournful, a dirge for a departed dire wolf, Grey Wind, who died fighting at his brother's side. We did not forget you, John thought. Hold the doors. So long as the bridge and gates are open, winter is coming for House Free. They heard the war horn on the western side of the camp, where Jason Mallister and the Silver Eagles broke their fast. And they heard the war horn on the southern edge, where Brynden Tully and his outriders rushed to saddle their horses and ride. Mage Mormont, the closest of the Stark commanders, already had her men armed and armored when the call came. But the quickest answer would come from the north. Brian followed Sir Pewin as they exited the castle onto the river. Her sword was at the knight's back, but the freemen showed no signs of betrayal. They were eager to repent, but she wondered whether it was too late. Her master at arms at Evenfall had told her the north was hard and cold, with no mercy. Judging from the eyes of the prisoners, Sir Goodwin was right. What in the seven hells is that? The Great Yon said. Near the shore, the rafts were empty, but at the water tower, the Winter Town boys were hard at work. A long ramp, made with planks and buttressed by wooden blocks, stretched from the stone bridge to the rafts below. Ropes had been lashed on both the upper and lower portions of the ramp, bracing the inclined plane of wood against the stone pier of the crossing. Brian squinted, and saw that on the broken bridge, another ramp also stretched down to the river. In between, flat sheets of wood lay over the line of rafts, connecting the two structures. Bloody hell! Jon Snow built another bridge. Willis Mandaily said. Was that possible? In the morning, Brian thought it was only a line of rafts butting against the crossing, but that was before the Winter Town boys built the ramps and the little birds laid out the deck. The rafts were connected now with more than just ropes. Cross planks formed a smooth surface across the Green Fork. A horn blew, long and low, the blast echoing over the river. A second burst rang out, followed by excited cries on the bridge. My mother's horn. Daisy said. Who is blowing the Mormont horn? Snow went to the gatehouse to raise the portcullis and lower the drawbridge. He must have succeeded. The gates are open, Brian said. The third blast reached their ears. And then a howl came from the north, a strange, terrifying sound, horrible and yet melodic. Dark shapes gathered on the broken bridge, their necks bent upward, as if howling at the moon. But there was no moon, Brian thought. The sun shone brightly over the Green Fork. A monstrous she-wolf with a white belly and dark gold eyes jumped from a wooden pier and landed on a raft. The floating bridge was a fragile thing. A horse would have to be led carefully over the deck. And men in armor would need to walk slowly to keep the ties between the rafts stable. But wolves were lighter than horses and more balanced than men. Nymerie ran over the pontoon rafts, her legs a white blur, until she sprang up the ramp onto the bridge. Her cousins followed, hundreds and hundreds of grey wolves. The dire wolf howled again at the water tower, and then raced west into the castle. Her little cousins followed, snarling and gnashing their teeth, ready to hunt and kill. The frenzied wolf pack passed the Stark soldiers without breaking stride. Screams broke out in the castle. Brian almost felt sorry for the Freys. Only 2 doors led to the guardroom, and the Freys were too stupid or too afraid to go through the window. The gatehouse had 3 floors. A bold man could climb down a rope to attack. Such a trick would not have succeeded, but the frantic attempts to breach the guardroom were failing. Against normal swordsmen, the sheer numbers of soldiers would have prevailed. But the Hound and Sir Michael Redfort were far from normal. Clegane fought with a brutal savagery that most could not match. What the Hound did with raw strength, Sir Michael achieved with speed and skill. Robar, Ben, Thoros and Gendry were wounded by arrows, but Andrew and Lord Beric still fought. And Ghost, Jon and Arya killed any men who managed to get past. A bugle sounded behind them. Whether it was a Tully trumpet or a piper horn, Jon did not care. The Stark bannermen were coming. From the corner of his eye, he saw a silver eagle on purple and a black trout on blue and red. The closest blazon was the black she-bear walking in a green wood. The Mormonts reached the drawbridge. Lady Mage sent 5 rows of 3 steel-clad soldiers abreast, with shields at the right and left sides to block arrows and more shields defending the front, back and top of the tortoise formation. A lusty roar broke out when the men reached the end of the tunnel unscathed. And then, a horde of angry Northmen and Riverlanders burst into the castle. Snow. A knight with a sigil of a black toad or frog on a white lily cried out in panic. Snow, will you accept our surrender? That depends, sir. Were you at Edmure Tully's wedding? Did you attack my brother's men at Seven Streams? Jon shot back. The old knight looked like he would piss himself. He ran, only to fall to Nymaria's jaws as the dire wolf ripped out his throat. The Hound and the knights watched as the other Free soldiers fell to the she-wolf's pack. They walked down the steps of the gatehouse to the keep, the Hound and Sir Michael guarding Jon. Truthfully, he didn't need them with Ghost and Balerion at his side. Nymeria accompanied Arya, and dozens of wolves cavorted around the courtyard. In the inner bailey, joyful reunions broke out between the ex-prisoners and their families. The Mandaeli brothers hugged, giant bellies jiggling as they slapped each other on the back. Jon saw a sheepish Edmure speaking quietly to the Blackfish, Tytos and his sons, Hoster and Brynden, embracing little Ben, happy Vances and Pipers, and Mage and Lyra Mormont holding Daisy close. Like always, the bellows of the Carstarks and Umbers threatened to drown out the other bannermen. Sir Alyn and Chet approached, unconcerned about the wolves surrounding Jon and Arya. "Report, sir," Jon said. "We have done it, Lord Snow. We have broken them. A few Freys have barricaded themselves on the upper levels of the keep, but our men only need rams to batter down the doors. Tell the Freys that I demand their surrender. If they do not open the doors, the deaths will be more painful." "And what about the prisoners?" "Maester, Lady Brian freed the prisoners. We saw the ones from the eastern castle on the bridge. And Clydas and Denai saw the others on the western river bank." Chet chirped. "You did well building the pontoon bridge, Chet. The Winter Town boys performed admirably. And make sure to thank the little birds too," Jon said. The boy beamed with pride. A crowd of bannermen had gathered around Jon and Arya. The Blackfish, the Great Jon and Lady Mormont pushed themselves to the front. "My lord, what are your orders?" Alyn said. "I want every Free brought to me, living or dead. Find them all, Lord Walder, his sons, their children and children's children." Jon said. "Lord Snow, we have not taken the eastern castle. Some of the Freys and their men may have escaped." Alyn said. "First, clear every part of this castle. Then take the eastern castle with no loss of northern lives. Chet, find ravens, either in the rookery here or back at the camps. Send ravens and riders to all the nearby holdfasts, village and inns. Anyone who shelters free men will suffer the same fate." Jon stopped and thought. "Bring all of the prisoners to me. Kevan Lannister. Baelor Hightower. Tarly. Every squire and lady from the Tooth. Every captured knight and lord. Let them see the fate of traitors. and send our most trusted men to escort Sansa and Robb here. Jon said. It may take time, Lord Snow. Lord Walder has a very large family. Then Robb will be here to see justice done. Jon replied. The great hall was already full of snot-nosed Freys praying to the Seven for mercy. A few minor prisoners had been delivered, Lord Crickehall and the Strongbow, Brax knights, Lord Istron, Prester men. The throne of black oak with the free sigil carved on the back, reserved for the Lord of the Crossing, was empty. Jon had spent the hour writing ravens, and speaking with the chastened lords. Among the bannermen, only the Mormonts could hold their heads high. Some of the pack had departed for the forests and hills, but others remained, devouring horses in the stable. The wolf-hounds in the kennels were all dead. Nymeria, Balerion and Ghost sat near Jon, and ravens fluttered about, waiting to take letters south and east. They dragged Lord Walder, his bald chinless head wearing a look of stunned disbelief. Ryman and his sons were brought in kicking and screaming, and a few others were bound in ropes with their wives, sons and daughters. There were lots and lots of Freys. Jon did not recognize many, but the plump man with dark ringlets of hair dressed in woman's garb was Lame Lothar. We found him trying to escape as a serving wench. He was hiding with the maids in a storeroom. Lord Beric said. Nymeria leaped forward, snarling, traces of blood still visible on her face. Jon raised a hand, and Ghost veered in front of his sister. The two direwolves trotted back to their bondmates. A warg walks among us, a warg. Snow will steal our children and mate with our women. He is an abomination before the Seven. Lothar frothed at the mouth. Perhaps I am a warg and a sorcerer. But you are a dead man. Your line is dead. Your house is dead. And soon enough, you will be dead. He spoke to the Stark guards. Take Walder, and chain him to the black chair he loves so. Make certain he has a good view. The old man babbled and screeched as Alabelly and Fat Tom grabbed and carried him. Chet and Jerry tied ropes firmly about the wrists, arms and neck. It was still morning on the Green Fork. Jon looked about the great hall, full of terrified prisoners. More were coming. When the sun sets, House Free shall end. Author's notes. Big Walder is one of the two wards sent to Winterfell. There is an inside joke on how Big Walder is actually shorter and smaller than Little Walder. The theory that Big Walder killed Little Walder is intriguing because he is only 9 years old. But Big Walder, son of Jarmos, is quite astute. The wolf pelt refers to the free letter to Tywin Lannister. Roslyn caught a fine fat trout. Her brothers gave her a pair of wolf pelts for her wedding. The trick of the missing cook fires comes from the Battle of Guiling in 354 BC. Warring States period in China. The battle was between Sun Bin and Pang Wan. Sun Bin had his troops use 100,000 cooking stoves the first day, 50,000 the second day, and 20,000 the third. Pang Wan believed Sun Bin's forces were deserting and rushed into an ambush. In the folklore version, Sun Bin carves the words Pang Wan dies under this tree on a tree and kills him there with archers. No way to fit that into this story though. Edwin's contribution about night soil comes from the war council at Riverrun in A Feast for Crows. While some prefer to negotiate, riverlords, and others to launch a raid, Strongbow, Edwin says the archers should poison their arrows with night soil, human shit, and aim for the Blackfish's helm. To which, Cale Vance asks whether the night soil will be Edwin's own contribution, or his actual shit. All warfare is deception. That comes from Sun Tzu's Art of War. Incidentally, Sun Bin claimed to be a descendant of Sun Tzu, and wrote his own book on tactics. Jon uses a pulley and windlass system to move heavy things, like Sandor Clegane. A windlass is a vertical capstan and both were used on ships to multiply force when pulling cords, ropes and sails. Archimedes, 200 BC, is credited as inventing the windlass, although it seems clear the Chinese also had their own version. The windlass is basically a complex pulley. Adam Marbrand has a similar idea to take the walls of Riverrun. He would have led a dozen men in boats and scaled the walls with ropes and grapnels. This plan is rejected by Walder Rivers, but the difference here is that there is a huge distraction, and the watchers are faced out toward the walls, not inward at the castle. A wine barrel, depending on the exact origin, holds about 32 gallons. A firkin is a quarter of the size. I would guess that a full barrel weighs about 300 pounds. A half barrel of beer, 15.5 gallons, weighs 30 pounds empty and 160 full. As for Aria's cord, the first fuses were used by the Chinese in the 10th century to delay ignition in fireworks. The north was hard and cold, and without mercy. Eddard Stark says that to Catelyn. I thought that was early, when they beheaded the deserter, but it turns out to be when Robb executed Lord Karstark for killing the Lannister boys. Jon Snow built a pontoon bridge, not to cross a river, but to link the two bridges. Pontoon bridges have been around since ancient times. Xerxes famously built one across the Hellespont, the strait that marks the border between Asia and Europe. Historians estimate that Xerxes transported several 100,000 men and all their baggage over a mile of water. The Chinese and the Romans also used pontoon bridges. Jon also used the empty wine and ale barrels left at the feast to make pontoon boats. In the DIY videos, you literally strap PVC barrels to a hardwood frame, and that's it. Technically, you also need to screw the barrels in place, get a sturdy board for the top of the frame, and leave a space for the engine. But that is a fancy video. Jon's barrel rafts are even simpler, although he has to devise a place for the ropes so the rafts could be tied together. The physics of pontoon bridges are odd. When men march in unison, the walkway would heave up and down, and pressure would build. But a heavier vehicle that distributes weight evenly causes very little stress. So a man or a horse had to cross carefully. But a tank could roll over without problems. The science is that each pontoon has to sink to gain buoyancy and recover when the load is passed. Nymeria is awesome, so she can lead a huge pack over at top speed. In A Feast of Crows, Jaime hears about a wolf attack hundreds of the bloody beggars with no fear, led by a monstrous she-wolf. This is Nymeria's pack. A walk walks among us is stolen from Janos Slynt when he is politicking to be Lord Commander. I am not sure why that line didn't matter in the book. The Jon chapters swing from I may be executed for living with wildlings to Jon Snow, Lord Commander. That's a credit to the untrustworthy POV and GRM's skill at selling Jon as a destined hero, well at least before the last 2 seasons. I don't see why the Night's Watch would want a Walk Commander unless they accept that Jon Snow is the promised one. When the sun sets, your line shall end is what Aegon the Conqueror says to Black Harren before Balerion burns the castle. And the actions of Nymeria, growling and snapping, mirrors Grey Wind's behavior at the twins in the books. Chapter 36, The Wake. Chapter text. The Wake. In the Great Hall, no one dared to speak as Jon examined the abomination. The bards would claim that the crowd was shocked into silence by the ghastly sight, but it may have just been the smell. The putrid stench of rotting flesh dominated the air. Grey Wind's head had been hacked off and sewn on a decapitated body. A circlet of iron with a few ungainly spikes was nailed to the head, a mockery of the crown of winter worn by the Stark kings. The dead body was bloated, oddly warm, and infested with squirming white maggots. Bumps protruded from the ravaged skin, reddish-black shells about to burst into flies. A broken crossbow bolt jutted from the neck, and the smoke-grey fur was blotched with dried brown blood. Like the dream, the golden eyes were sad. Where is the rest of the body? The girl froze. Jon waited for a response. After a long silence, the young servant gulped and looked up. In the garderobe, near the rookery. That's where they cut up the wolf. Sir. Milord. She stammered the last few words, and shrank back, like a dog about to be beaten. Bring me the rest of the dire wolf. Every bit you can find. Jon said. After 2 weeks, there would be little left, but Grey Wind deserved their best efforts. The wench nodded and hurried off. Who? The question hung over the hall like a dark cloud. Jon did not bother to repeat himself. Robin Roger, his right arm bandaged, cleaned and set into a cast, stepped forward. Elwood, Lord Snow. A good man. He was a Tully guard for 6 years. Bury Elwood in a cairn by the Trident. Mark his name. Jon said. Chet, wash Grey Wind in water and wine. Take off the metal band. Wrap him in a shroud of linen, and find herbs. The Winter Town boys cut away the stitchings and placed the headless body in a wheelbarrow. Jon gently closed the dire wolf's eyes before Chet took away the head with great care. Who did this? Who cut off Grey Wind's head? It was our Maester. A free girl blurted. Someone shoved forward Brenneat, a bald, double-chinned man with raven droppings on his robes. Maester Brenneat whimpered and fell on his knees in supplication. I doubt he took the body from Seven Streams and brought it to the twins. Who hatched this idea of parading Grey Wind as a trophy of war? Few phrase met John's eyes. The other prisoners from the Westerlands and the Reach looked away, hoping to avoid any unwanted attention. The Maester of the twins continued to blubber. It was Waylan, my lord. The answer came from a small skinny boy with the face of a fox. And you are? Walder, son of Jarmos. They call me Big Walder. I am the oldest grandson of Lord Free named Walder. Waylan is my father's brother and married to my mother's sister. How do you know? I heard Lothar and Waylan speaking of it, and my uncles gave him the honor of carrying the wolf head to Lord Free. The skinny boy said. John nodded. Small Janumber grabbed Waylan by the scruff of the neck and hurled him forward. A girl wailed before her young mother hushed her with a hand over the mouth. The boy lies. I had nothing to do with this. I was drinking at Seven Streams. I never touched the wolf. The man babbled away. Maester Brenneat, is it true? John asked. The fat man in grey gave a fearful nod and Waylan shrieked in alarm. He turned a hateful look at Big Walder, but the boy's cold eyes did not blink. Lord Snow, we could put them to the question. Harry on Karstark said. No need for torture. John replied. In the morning light, Ghost's eyes gleamed blood red like a face carved into a heart tree. Bring me a barrel of pitch and a torch. The Northmen trust Waylan like a chicken to be roasted over a spit, bound by rope over shoulders, arms and legs. A simple fire pit was built in the middle of the hall, with bricks and stone taken from the hearth, and the Smalljan tossed the man into the crude circle. A winter town boy ladled thick black tar on the back of the sobbing Frizz head and greasy hair. The Black Tom hissed and jumped off the table. John lit the torch and walked closer, past the eyes of horrified Reachmen, the Westermen, and Riverlanders. Wayland's cries for mercy fell on deaf ears. John thrust the torch forward. The black pitch combusted, the whoosh of the flames dancing in the air. The head burned a bright yellow, and the screaming became louder, until suddenly stopping. The heat did not bother John or Balerion. Cut the head and hands off. We will send them as gifts for Tywin Lannister. Servants removed the burnt body before the Winterfell men entered the room. 4 Stark guards, led by Sir Alyn, bore the Lord of Winterfell on a canvas stretcher covered with thick wool blankets. Robb wore a white surcoat emblazoned with a running grey dire wolf. His breathing was regular, but he was still pale, John thought. More eyes in the hall were on the tall graceful girl with auburn hair and bright blue eyes. In the last few days, only the most trusted retainers had access to the Stark tent. Wild tales had spread of the escape from King's Landing, but few knew the true tale, and none of those dwelled at the twins. Her presence shocked the Freys and the other prisoners. Sansa Stark sat with her siblings, as they placed Robb down between Ghost and Nymeria. The Hound and Brian loomed near, staring warily at the crowd. Lady Sansa, we heard that you would be married to the imp. Edmure Tully said. She raised her voice so that the hall could hear. My brother John rescued me from the Red Keep. He burnt down the Iron Throne with wildfire before we departed. It was an ugly chair. I only wish Lord Tywin or Joffrey had been sitting there when I burned it down. Balerion hissed but calmed at his touch. Tell me, Free, what did the Lannisters promise you? How much gold and land did you shit on your family on for? Walder Free shot John an angry look. Everything I have done is for my family, bastard. I have taken care of my own, and seen my sons, daughters and grandchildren married, and married well. Any lands and titles would have gone to my children. House Lannister would have ensured their future. So you committed treason for the good of your family. Betrayed allies, imprisoned your liege lord, broke guest right, killed Lady Stark, and butchered countless unarmed men. All these crimes were for the glory of House Free. I have to provide for my family. The old man spat back. You won't have that problem much longer. They sing in the north about the rat cook and how the gods cursed him to devour his young after breaking guest right. They will sing songs about how your greed destroyed your house. I am not guilty of treason, bastard. You are. I serve the true king, Joffrey Baratheon, the first of his name. Edmure Tully and Robb Stark rebelled against the Iron Throne. Their actions revoke my oaths to House Tully. Walder Frey said. You are a treacherous scum. Service to Joffrey will not save you from justice. King's Landing is 800 miles away. I would be quite happy to defeat what remains of the Lannister army. But you will be long dead before that happens. Then I would appeal to the gods. I demand a trial by combat. Lord Walder said. The great hall was in an uproar. Sir Brynden was livid, along with every lord whose heirs had been imprisoned at the Twins. How dare you? Lord Piper screeched. A trial by combat is an appeal to the Seven for justice. You broke guest right, which is sacred. And you imprisoned our heirs at a wedding. Any noble has a right to a trial by combat. Any man can appoint another to fight. Lothar said. It is true, my lord. The right to a trial by combat is enshrined in the faith of the Seven. An old white-bearded septon said. Did you preside over Edmure Tully's wedding? Jon asked. The man cringed and said no more. I would be happy to represent House Stark at any trial. They killed my friends Roland and Elbereth at Seven Streams. Sir Michael Redfort said. The Vale Knight had volunteered first, but many others loathed Lord Walder, the Great Jon, the Blackfish, even Tytos Blackwood and Jon Osbracken. Jon was certain that Brian or the Hound would be willing to face a Frey. And who will be your champion? Jon asked. Black Walder. Lord Frey's great-grandson had a fearsome reputation as a warrior. Still, that was among the Freys, who were average fighters at best. Michael was one of the best swordsmen in the Vale, and both Brian and the Hound were vicious in battle. Lord Snow, I wish to face him. Daisy had washed her face, but only time could heal the black eye, broken nose, and bruised lips. She had replaced her torn clothes with a dark green studded brigandine and a plain mace. The steel morning star had been lost at Seven Streams. Black Walder gave a shrill hiccup of a laugh. Can't get enough of me, can you, girl? After I win, I will chain you to my bed. Daisy flushed red. I will kill you before you ever lay a hand on me again. You were a prisoner for 2 weeks. I do not. Jon said. Prisoner. She was my whore. Ask her. Ask her how she squealed and shuddered when I fucked her. Or have you and your brother had her already, Snow? You raped me, you bastard. Daisy said. And now, you might have a bastard of your own. An angry rumble came from the Northmen. Either Black Walder believed that he would win a trial by combat, or he knew he was a dead man, and wanted to go out in a blaze of glory, showing contempt for the North. Neither was acceptable to Jon. You can face me. The small Jon bellowed, waving a huge, ugly greatsword. No, I fight my own battles. Snow, I can defeat him. I can. Daisy said. Jon held his hand up for silence. Lord Walder, I will grant you trial by combat before the eyes of the gods. Small Jon, hurry on, cut Black Walder free. The Free Knight grinned as the ropes dropped from his arms and feet. He leered at the Mormont girls, a sneer on the surly black-bearded face. Am I to face the bitch? A she-bear was called a sow, but Jon doubted the quality of the education at the Twins. Black Walder, did you truly rut with Lady Daisy? She begged for my cock. She couldn't get enough. Said she never had something so thick or large. I may have ruined her for you though. I am glad you said those words. Hold him by the arms. The two heirs grabbed the Free Knight in a tight vice-like grip. Black Walder may have been tall and wiry, but the small Jon and Harry on Karstark were tall, powerful men, even by the standards of the North. Jon stood up, the eyes of the whole on him. He took out a thick steel knife, with a single sharp edge for cutting and a heavy point for thrusting. Daisy, Black Walder claims you enjoyed his cock. Then you should keep it as a gift. The Sheba grinned as she grabbed the blade. Small Jon and Harry clamped burly arms around both shoulders. Daisy yanked down the breeches and cut off the offending appendage and held the bleeding trophy up for everyone to see. The cheers of the Mormonts almost drowned out the shrieking Black Walder. Looks rather small and shriveled, but perhaps things are different at the Twins. Jon shrugged. You cannot attack a man before a trial by combat. Lothar yelled. Why? Was he planning to fight with his cock? If so, that would have been a short battle. John stuck a torch into the still hot embers of the fire pit. When the wood burned, he thrust the tip into the naked groin, to the gasps of the prisoners. The sickly smell of burnt flesh drifted through the hole and the screaming turned into whimpers. John took away the torch and nodded for Smallgen and Harry on to release the knight. Black Walder collapsed into a fetal position, hands over the mutilated nether regions, and passed out, breeches still at the knees. John waited but the man did not rise. Your champion forfeited. You lose, Lord Walder. I declare you guilty. You cheated, Snow. It is not fair, it is not fair. The old man whined like a petulant child. No, it is not. You shouldn't have killed a dire wolf. John sat down. Bind Black Walder again. Lord Snow, can't we just behead him now? It is a waste of rope. Harry said. No. His cock belongs to Daisy Mormont but his life belongs to me. Black Walder will not bleed to death. He will be awake when I burn him alive. Traitors do not deserve to die with honor. John burned the younger Free sons first, Elmar, Walter, and Colmar. Any boy who went as a page or squire to Seven Streams died in the flames. Many of Lord Walder's grandsons fell into this group. The male lines of House Hague, Vipren and Charlton were extinguished. The Lord of House Irenford had been too ill to attend but his knights were hung from the rafters. The dire wolf's remains, wrapped in a white shroud so only the head was visible, rested in an open pine coffin next to Rob. Jerry had rubbed sweet-smelling balsam on the skin, and laid a bed of penna oil blooms under the body. The crushed leaves smelled strongly of mint. The lilac flowers made Grey Wind look like an uncrowned king. Maester Snow, we found it. Chet entered with a small box bursting with parchment. And where was it? John reached out. In a chest in Lotharfrey's room. Under his wife's clothes. Chet announced. Lord Snow, I knew nothing about this. A dark blonde woman bleated. She sat with 4 frightened girls. The oldest was younger than Arya. The youngest was an infant on the teat. What is in the box? Arya asked. Letters from Tywin Lannister. He kept them to record the promises made by the Iron Throne. John scanned the notes quickly. Quite a reward. Lord Walder will be declared Lord Paramount of the Trident, Sir Aemon Free gets Riverrun, Lancel and Davin Lannister will marry 3 girls and 1 will receive the Dare lands. 2 other of Walder's sons will marry Eleanor Mouton and Joy Hill. And oh, Lord Tywin has awarded your hand in marriage to a Free. Who? Arya demanded loudly as Nymeria growled. Elmar. He's already dead. I will send his skull and ashes to King's Landing. John stared hard at Walder's sons. Which one of you is Aemon Free? Sir Aemon married Lady Jenna Lannister, Lord Tywin's sister. They dwell in Casterly Rock. Maester Brenneat said. John thought for a bit. Cleo's Free. Your mother was a Lannister. Now, you are the heir to Riverrun. A Stark guard pushed the butt of a spear into his back and Cleo stumbled forward. I knew nothing of any plans. I would hope not. You have been a captive since the Whispering Wood. Still, you are a threat to House Tully. And your brother Shan is also our prisoner. John said. I will renounce any claim to Riverrun. Cleo's blurted out. I swear it on the 7. My brother, as well. We are no threat to you. He looked like a particularly nervous weasel. His younger brother, Shan, was braver but that was not saying much. Lord Snow, killing Cleo's won't help. He has 2 sons with Jane D'Ari and 2 brothers at Casterly Rock. Alive, he has value as a hostage to Lady Jenna. Kevan Lannister was stolid and firm, even in the face of death. His 3 children and wife took after him. And does your sister care whether he returns alive or dead? Of course she does. He is her son. Kevan said. Your brother didn't give a shit about the lives of his knights and lords. Many of them are related to him by marriage. So long as Sir Jaime was freed, Tywin Lannister approved Walder's treachery. He knew I could kill you, your wife, and your children. And I would, had Robb died. John stopped for a moment to let the words sink in. Sir Cleos, you will live for now. You should thank your uncle for speaking on your behalf. John held up a note, marked with a crook and sigil. A letter from Pike. How do you get this, Lothar? Why would Euron Greyjoy write to you? Go to hell. Lothar said. I can guess the answer. Tywin Lannister urged the Greyjoys to attack Seaguard. If Robb was beaten, you would have free men kill any survivors. But Robb won, so you had another plan to invite the Northmen to a feast where you broke guest right. Why would I tell you anything, bastard? You will kill me anyway. Lothar shot back. True. Anyone aware of the Black Wedding and the Traitors' Feast will die. Lothar gave a feral grin. Then I will tell you something. Roslyn Frey knew. She knew we planned to take Edmure Tully prisoner. Then she dies. Jon said. Roslyn Frey was a small girl, with a slight chin, a delicate nose, and slim hips. Her long brown hair framed big brown eyes and a pale white face. She was quite pretty, and hid her fear well, walking without any prompting from the Stark guards. My lord, you cannot believe Lothar. He is a trickster and a cheat. Perwyn shouted. Lady Roslyn. Did you know of your lord father's treachery? Jon asked. She bowed, exposing a slender neck. Yes, my lord. They told me the day before the wedding. Lothar said they would kill me and my brothers if I said anything. I did not tell them, Lord Snow. I never spoke to my brothers, or sisters about it. Who informed you? Jon ignored the quiet sobs from many of the free women. To her credit, Roslyn met his gaze. Lame Lothar. Ryman and Denise were there as well, but they did not speak. Roslyn said. Lord Snow. I served you at the Golden Tooth, and at the God's Eye. And my brother almost died for Robb in the Reach. Spare my sister. Kill me instead. Perwyn begged. You are a prisoner, Perwyn. Your life is not yours to give. Jon said bluntly. Roslyn assisted the plot, and for that, there is only one sentence. The North does not forgive. Roslyn is not a Free. She is a Tully. Edmure said. I do not care what her last name is. I ended House Vipren because they attended your wedding. That they were not Freys did not matter. Roslyn helped Lothar commit these crimes. Edmure, this is not. The Blackfish said. No, uncle. Roslyn is my wife. I said the vows before a septon and in the eyes of the seven. I am hers and she is mine. I will not abandon my wife. Edmure said. Your wife knew that you would be a captive in a few hours. That your bannermen would be captured and your guards would be killed. How many Tully men died at the Twins? Your sister died. And after the blasted wedding, they attacked my brother and his men. She may carry my child, Snow. We pledged ourselves before the gods. Edmure mumbled. The Lord of Riverrun looked miserable but determined. My brother had a child too. Talisa was pregnant with his babe before the Freys murdered her. What would have happened if I had not taken the Twins? You would be locked in a dungeon for the rest of your miserable life. Walder Frey would rule the Riverlands. One of his sons would sit in your father's solar. The other Freys would murder your bannermen to take their castles. My lords, perhaps we can discuss this later, when cooler heads prevail. Jason Mallister said. I won't allow my wife to die. My men will protect Roslyn. Edmure said. That was the wrong thing to say. Your men. Your men died at the Twins. Your men did not rescue you. House Stark saved you. House Stark captured the Twins. House Stark freed your bannermen. Jon's anger carried through the hall. Lord Snow, our uncle is disquieted over his recent imprisonment. His fears have made him speak unwisely. Perhaps, we can come to terms over Roslyn. Sansa said. Terms? What terms would this be? Jon said. Edmure must offer something of great value for the life of his lady. Sansa said. Lord Snow, I offer my services to the north. I will pledge the swords of House Tully to Winterfell. I will shield your back and keep your counsel. Jon bit back a sharp retort. Riverrun had few swords left, and while he valued the Blackfish, he did not need Sir Brynden to wage war. The lords and knights in the hall went quiet, joining the silent prisoners. Edmure was no relation of his, but the Tully lord shared blood with Robb, Arya and Sansa. Jon looked at his fallen brother. No, not fallen. Robb was not dead, only resting. One day, his brother would rise again, and rule the north from Winterfell. Robb would be more generous with Lord Tully, and Jon had to put his own feelings aside. Jon spoke first to the prisoners. If I were Lord of Winterfell, there would be no settlement. I would kill all of you. But I am not Lord of Winterfell. My brother is, and he is more merciful than me. Pray that he lives, because if Robb dies, I will be far less kind. He turned to Ed Muir. These are my terms, sir. You will swear an oath, and bind your children, and children's children. For 100 years, House Tully will follow the commands of House Stark without fail. Ed Muir gulped and nodded. The Blackfish was resigned to his nephew's folly and the other Riverlords were too weak to object. Jon turned last to the lady in question. Roslyn Free, you are pardoned for your crimes. Go back to Oliver and Pywin. Those two have served the North well. You will be safe with them. But your other brother was at Seven Streams. They threw Benfrey into the fire pit. He screamed a long time. By lunchtime, a dozen sons were already dead, their skulls and hands in a pile in front of a slack-jawed Walder Free. Some hadn't died by fire. One, a particularly fat, slovenly man, had protested that he had done no fighting, and was only told to get the Great Jon drunk. Meret Free had passed out during the feast and not woken until the fighting was over. Her brother had listened, and then ordered servants to bring out a butt of wine. The giant barrel was taller than Arya. The protesting Free was drowned, his chicken-like legs sticking up in the air. What a waste of wine! Sir Andrew Tollett sighed, licking his lips. If it was only one Free, the knight might have taken a sip. But a half-dozen other men were held under, until their bodies stopped thrashing. Their corpses were removed but the vintage was already spoiled. Arya picked at her boiled beef and radishes. It was tasty enough with bread and cheese, but she would have preferred to leave. Jon departed before lunch, his priority sending ravens to expose the promises that Tywin had made to the Freys. Arya knew that stripping an ancient house of their castle and breaking guest right would set highborns against the lions. The question though was whether anyone, besides the North, had the courage to fight. Jerry, did my brother leave this behind? Sansa pointed to a piece of parchment. No, my lady. It is a list of names sentenced to die. If the Maester doesn't return, we will kill them after lunch. The blonde boy cheerfully replied. Arya could see a dozen more Freys on the sheet. Lord Walder was the last, with only Ryman and Lame Lothar before him. These 12 would all die by fire. Why does he have to burn them? Couldn't Snow simply execute the guilty? Brian said. But he has. The archers, crossbowmen and men-at-arms who surrendered were beheaded this morning and thrown into a mass grave. Only the highborn were burnt. Jerry added. Brian turned white. But they yielded. I am sorry, Lady Sansa, your brother is a cruel man. He could have spared them. Oh, please. Snow has been less violent than expected. Clegane snorted. What would Tywin do if the Freys attacked his men at a feast? Far worse than Snow. Tywin butchered the 3-year-old Tarbecker and drowned everyone in the mines of Castamaria. Why is death by water any worse than death by fire? But they could be sent to the wall. There, they would still serve the 7 kingdoms. Why would we want Freys at the wall? They are liars and traitors. Arya demanded. Arya. Her sister hissed. She turned to see Roslyn's pale ashen face, leading half a dozen ladies over to their table. Some were older, some younger, but all the Free women had been crying. Arya scowled and stabbed the beef as some meaningless pleasantries were exchanged. Lady Sansa, I am glad you are freed from King's Landing. Roslyn said. Lady Roslyn, I wish you happiness in your marriage. Sansa replied. May I introduce my sisters and nieces? My nieces, Zia, daughter of Tytos, Fair Walder, daughter of Stefan, and Alex, daughter of Simund. And these are my half-sisters, Tita, daughter of Alyssa Blackwood, and Arryn and Shireen, daughters of Anna Faring. The last one was only 6 and clung to her older sister's skirts. I am pleased to meet you all. Sansa said with grace and courtesy. Arya did not pretend to be pleased. Of the many daughters and granddaughters, these 6 looked least like Lord Walder. That was no accident. My sisters and nieces wonder what will become of the castles. It is the only home they have known. Roslyn said. Sansa blinked. I do not know. Why not ask Lord Edmure? House Tully rules the Riverlands. Everyone knows that snow will decide our fate. Tita said bluntly. She was the oldest free, and still unmarried at the age of 30. Jon had not executed any women. At least not yet, Arya thought grimly. She suspected a few wives but there was no evidence. Lothar's wife, Aleford, had nearly passed from hysteria, denying any involvement and knowledge. Her niece, Lady Alyssa, attempted to console her, but Leonella Free was still in a panic over her girls. Lady Sansa, I beg you to speak to your brother on behalf of my sisters and nieces. They fear for their future. Roslyn said. Jon keeps his own counsel. Arya said abruptly. That is quite true. Sansa admitted. I have not seen him for more than 4 years since he left for the Citadel. Surely, your husband might intercede for your sisters. Snow is not likely to listen to Lord Tully. Tita declared. We do not know who else to ask, my lady. It is a hard thing to wait while others determine your fate. Arya stood up. I need air. She ignored her sister's reproof as she left the hall. No one bothered Arya on the walk to the bridge. Nymeria had not left her side that morning, and the dire wolf was more fearsome than any night. Further, everyone was busy. Hundreds of prisoners needed to be watched and guarded. The Mormonts counted the soldiers still healthy enough to fight. The Umbers and Karstarks took charge of the baggage and the supply train. The Wintertown boys focused on food and fodder. The Marndalis scoured both castles for any loot. They found chests of silver, bags of gold, jeweled rings, silk bolts, fine tableware, and suits of enameled armor. The servants at the Twins had been pathetically eager to give up Walder Frey's treasures. They were deathly afraid, Arya realized. The sun passed its highest point. A flock of small folk gathered on both shores to gawk at the pontoon bridge, like villagers attending a royal tourney. The foresters sang while they helped the little birds dismantle rafts. Wine barrels rested on the banks, waiting for barges. Septons preached fiery sermons on how the father punished Lord Walder for his crimes. Bloody fools, she thought. It had nothing to do with the gods. Winter came for House Free. Arya Stark. A graceful woman watched the murky green water rush under the bridge. Lady Ravler. Arya smiled but Nymeria's ears prickled, remembering the cramped bathtub, scalding water and stinky flowers. I am sorry about Lady Stark. I did not know her well but she seemed a good woman, who cared greatly about her daughters. Arya nodded. Why are you here, my lady? It is far from Acorn Hall. They killed my husband Theomar at Edmure's wedding. I did not love him, but we wed when I was 1 and 7. I bore him 2 children, my boy who died and my Caroline who I sent to Old Town. The Freys stripped his body and threw it, with his slain knights, into the river. My brother will kill his murderers. The servants claim Snow will bake Walder Free into a pie to serve his family. Lady Smallwood sighed. Vengeance won't bring back my lord. Why are you on the bridge, Lady Arya? I thought you would be seated at the high table with your brother and sister. I was but then Roslyn Free and her sisters came over. They begged Sansa to speak with Jon for them. Arya snorted. I can understand their fear, the lady said softly. Why? Jon hasn't executed any women or children. In her mind, the squires that fought at Seven Streams were as guilty as the men. What happens next? Your brother will kill any free knights or men at arms. Who will protect them? Where will they go? What happens to a highborn lady without a home or gold? They can return back to their other families. Walder took wives from many houses. So did his sons. Or they can go with Roslyn to Riverrun. Arya said. Do you think they will be welcomed there? The Freys butchered the Tully guards. They killed Edmure's knights and imprisoned his companions. The North may remember but the men of the Trident do not forget. No, child. Their fears are well placed. My uncle is an idiot. He should have set her aside. He had been with her for a few hours before her brothers threw him into the dungeons. Lord Edmure has a good heart but a soft head. He is kind to his people and too honourable to discard Roslin. He can hawk, dance, and bow as well as any, but in war, my brothers are better. Arya had heard the whispers that morning. They feared Jon. Edmure is a fine ruler in a time of peace, but he cannot defend his people in war. I do not know how much longer I can hold Acorn Hall. I have walls, but not enough men. When the war comes next, I doubt we will survive. But there is no more fighting in the Riverlands. Arya said. How long will that last? Tywin Lannister will demand we bend the knee, or he will send reavers and rapers into the Riverlands again. Your brothers will not allow that. The war will return. You could come north with us, my lady. The Starks would protect you. And what of my people? We are a small house, and beholden to Lord Cale Vance. I must hold Acorn Hall for my liege and my Caroline, for whatever good that does her. Arya wondered if she would ever see Lady Ravler alive again. Would she be dead when winter came? Would her daughter return from Old Town to a sacked castle? She felt ashamed of her anger at the Free Girls. I will speak to Jon. He will protect you and your people. But how? He does not have many men. Your brother cannot save everyone. But he can save you. You are pledged to Cale Vance, and the Vances are loyal to Riverrun. Edmure has sworn his swords to Winterfell. You are our bannerman, and the Starks do not abandon our men. Do not worry. My brother will find a way. Arya left to find Jon. The Freys did not believe in death with dignity. They screeched and wailed and begged as they were dragged to the fire pit. They screamed as the flames consumed them. The names on the parchment had been scratched off: Hostine, Simund, Danwell, Raymond who had slit Lady Catelyn's throat, Jared, Innes, Peter, Edwin, Black Walder, Ryman, Lame Lothar, and finally there was only one left. The Great Jon grabbed Walder by the scruff of his scrawny wattled neck. The old man had pissed himself in fear, and Lord Umber held him at the end of his long arms. The Great Jon deposited him into the fire pit, still red hot from Lame Lothar's burning. Walder Free fell over on his knees, and rolled around in the embers, shrieking like a large and very ugly baby. No last words. No clever jibes. Jon asked, as the Winter Town boys brought over a small cask full of black pitch and tar. Only sobs could be heard from the pit. Count yourself fortunate. You will die quickly. Chet lit the cask and the flames burned red, yellow and black. Jon dumped the barrel of burning pitch on Walder, the liquid fire pouring down the eyes, the nose, and the throat and encasing the body. A short shrill squeal and it was over. The last and final Lord of the Crossing was dead. For dinner, servants delivered cauldrons of mutton in a thick broth of ale and onions to the hall. To their shock, the Freys ate with the other prisoners. Only 3 of Walder's sons survived, Stevron, Perwyn and Oliver, and a handful of grandsons over the age of 5. Jon listened to both Arya and Sansa. That night, he left the castle to sleep under the stars. Tywin Lannister was running out of henchmen. In the taverns, bards sang of the Mountain's last ride, but in the small council, the Grand Maester was an equally damning loss. Pycelle was a toad, but he was his father's creature, a spy in the Red Keep and a reliable vote on the small council. 3 weeks after the wildfire wedding, the Iron Throne struggled to find a suitable replacement. And the Maesters declined to offer any help. The conclave chose Gorman Tyrell, Mace's uncle, as a replacement for Pycelle. Tyrion said. Father will never allow that. Cersei said. It has been 40 years since a Grand Maester was elected. Gorman was one of 3 Tyrells considered for the position. There are more Maesters from the Reach than all the other kingdoms combined. Tyrion said. What about the Maester at Casterly Rock? Why not appoint him? Cersei said. Crelan was a decent man, but had no chance of being selected. Only the conclave chooses the Grand Maester. There are 21 Archmaesters, and they care more about the names of comets than the desires of the Lannisters. Tyrion replied. The Citadel has no army. Who are they to say who Joffrey can appoint? The Grey Rats can complain, but they will not force the issue. Cersei said. Those grey rats are in every castle in the 7 kingdoms. We have enough enemies already. We don't need to make more. Tyrion said. It was not the first time he and Cersei disagreed. It was pointless to try to change his sister's mind. Have you found men for the Kingsguard? Jaime shook his head. I would consider the Strongbow and Robert Brax, but they are both captives of the north. And Adam Marbrand is his father's heir. I have found someone who could be a fine master of whispers. Cersei preened. Lord Orton Merryweather. The man with a nose like a potato and hair like a carrot. Jaime said skeptically. He has offered to spy on Mace Tyrell for me. Cersei said. And what is he telling you? Did Mace have honeyed ham or lamprey pie for breakfast? How many glasses of arbor gold did the fat flower drink? Tyrion chimed in. Poached pears in honey. Or peaches in sweet cream. If Lord Mace used the sword as much as the fork, he would be the greatest warrior since Sir Arthur Dane. Jaime said. Laugh all you want. At least I have a spy among the Tyrells. Cersei said. No, you do not. Mace Tyrell is a bumbler. Olenna Tyrell rules her son, and she is not dumb enough to trust Orton Merryweather with anything important. Tyrion said. The doors to the small council chambers burst open to reveal a gaunt grey face. Only 6 moons ago, Lancel Lannister had been a handsome squire full of youthful promise. Now he looked like an old man with hollow cheeks and tired, nervous eyes. The twins have fallen. Lancel announced, loud enough for everyone outside the doors to hear. But, how? Jaime asked. The High Septon claims it is punishment for their sins. That the gods will damn any man who abused the sacrament of marriage and the sacred laws of hospitality. One castle is not easy to siege, let alone 2. The north does not have many men, particularly with Edmure and the other lords as hostages. You need siege towers, battering rams, catapults, and ladders. Storming a castle takes a long time. Jaime said. Yet it had been done so quickly that the singers would compose another damned song. Tyrion wondered if it would be Twilight of the Twins or some other ridiculous name. How does the High Septon know? No ravens have come to the Red Keep. It was still early in the morning. Everyone in the September of Baelor knows. Snow took the twins yesterday at dawn. Lancel said. Of course. The ravens reached the castles in the Riverlands last night. News would spread to the villages and the septs, and the High Septon has spies there. Tyrion said aloud. How could Walder Free be so incompetent? Perhaps the battle was bloody and both sides lost many men. If Snow is wounded or killed, that would solve our problems. Cersei ranted. The Septons say Snow suffered no losses. He crushed the phrase with ease. He did not even need any rivermen to fight for him. Joffrey will be angered greatly. This defeat will bring shame to the Iron Throne. Cersei said. Shame the throne. Who cares about Joffrey's moods? Lancel exploded. My father, mother, brothers and sister are all prisoners. The Maester at the Tooth says that Mother and Janie were dragged north after the phrase shat on guest right. Janie is a girl of 3 name days. What do you think the White Wolf will do to her? Will he kill her in front of my father and mother? Or sell her as a slave to some savage at the end of the world? Joffrey is your king, sir. Cersei replied sharply. Lancel looked at her with loathing. He is a fool that chopped Ned Stark's head off. He is not fighting this war. Joffrey ran like a coward at the wildfire wedding. We all saw his courage. Fortunately, Jaime stopped Cersei from spewing more nonsense. Lancel, your fears may be overdone. I was a prisoner at Riverrun with your father and brothers. We were treated better than we could have hoped. Walder Free is a dead man, but your family had nothing to do with his treachery. Why would your mother or sister be harmed? Then why were they taken north? The prisoners were safe at the Tooth. My family had nothing to do with this, but yours did. As soon as you were safe, your father plotted these shameful deeds. Tywin Lannister only cares about you, Jaime. He doesn't give a shit about the rest of us. He would be happy to trade all of our lives to win the war. There is no proof, sir, that Lord Tywin had any ties to Walder Free's schemes. Cersei said. His face purpled. Stop with your lies. The truth has already won. The gods will punish those guilty for these crimes. I will pray to the Mother for mercy and to the Crone for wisdom. And if my family should be saved, I will dedicate my life to the faith." Lancel stormed off. "He didn't tell us whether Edmure Tully was rescued or died in the castle," Circea complained. "Ask Lord Merryweather and his vast network of spies," Tyrion quipped. Jaime laughed. Circea did not. As the new master of coin, Tyrion had far fewer guards. He took all of them, Bronn and Pod, into King's Landing. Whatever the Septons knew, the Sparrows would as well. With the Riverlands at peace, the number of refugees in the city had shrunk. The ones that remained were more militant and better organized. The Sparrows had no love for Lord Tywine. They were angered at the destruction in the Riverlands, and furious about the crimes of Walder Free. Tyrion wondered how they would react to this news. They arrived at the manse just south of the Iron Gate. Olive-skinned spearmen stared hard at the carriage. They were backed by more guards in canary yellow robes and white headdresses with heavy crossbows. Oberyn Martell seemed like a dandy, but he had fought in the disputed lands, and founded his own company of sellswords. It was a good thing that Dorne and the North were far away, Tyrion thought. Both kingdoms were good at war. The steward announced their names to the Martells. 3 sand snakes lounged under the fruit trees in the garden. One glared, one scoffed, and the last stared curiously at him. Their father ate breakfast with Ellaria, and a slender young man with curly black hair and brown skin. Tyrion wondered why the Summer Islander looked familiar. Tyrion Lannister. Oberyn pushed forward a plate of flatbread, olives, and dates stuffed with cheese and nuts. "Eat. I don't murder guests like Walder Free or Tywine Lannister." "Thank you." As Pod and Bronn took a bite, Tyrion stole a glimpse at the letter under the Red Viper's plate. A hungry raven ate corn from the young man's hand. "Why are you here, Lannister?" Ellaria said. "I have come to ask about my niece, Myrcella, and whether she has taken well to Sunspear and the Water Gardens." Tyrion said. "He wants to see what we know about the twins." The third sand snake said. "The news must have just reached the Lannisters." "Is that so? Did it arrive by Raven?" Oberyn smirked. "Our spies in the Riverlands sent a letter. Everyone on the Trident knows of the Lannisters' treachery. The Trident was a long river. The news might have spread as far west as Hornval and Deepden and as far east to Solpans. By tomorrow, all the Westerlands would know, and ships calling at the Bay of Crabs would visit the Vale and Crackclaw Point. I hope Snow sent your father a raven. I would have loved to see Tywine's face. Dear Lord Hand, you are a lying piece of shit. Lothar Free has confessed all." Oberyn said. "Those are only words. There is no proof that my house was involved. Snow has letters. Written in your father's hand with the Lannister seal to Lothar Free. He read them aloud to his lords. Your father promised Riverrun and Daeari to the Freys. He also would marry Joyhill and Eleanor Mouton to Walder's sons. The wolves will tear Lord Mouton to pieces for his treachery. The Dornish prince was enjoying himself immensely. At least Joy, his favorite uncle's daughter, would not have to marry a Free. She was a sweet child and deserved better." Tyrion gave up any pretense of ignorance. "What else does the letter say? How did Snow take the twins so quickly? And what will happen to the prisoners?" "Which set of prisoners?" Oberyn asked pointedly. "The spy writes that Snow took a bridge with a bridge. We do not know what that means. A mummus riddle. There were 3 sets of prisoners at the twins. Edmure Tully and the Highborn from the north and the Riverlands were one. The Freys were another, although Tyrion doubted anyone would shed tears for them. The third were the hostages from the Reach and the Westerlands. How angry would the North be about his father's actions? Is Edmure Tully alive?" Tyrion asked. "Who gives a shit about Edmure Tully? He doesn't matter," an elegant sand snake said, stabbing a blood orange with a curved dagger. "What plans does Snow have for the prisoners? Will he kill the Freys? And what of the men captured in earlier battles?" Tyrion said. The oldest sand snake, a tall angry muscled beast of a woman, snarled. "He should strangle them with their own guts. Fortunately, you do not decide their fate. Tyrion replied. The youngest girl, who looked as innocent as a scepter, spoke gently. You must forgive Oberyn. She is furious to miss the fighting. Snow is younger than her by many years and yet he has won battle after battle. And now, he has exposed your lord father as a cheat and a liar. I already know my father's character. Tell me what Snow will do to the prisoners. He has my uncle, my cousins, and many aunts. He holds over 50 Lannister squires. We don't know. I have someone I trust at the Citadel. 4 years ago, Jon Snow was just a clever boy, eager to learn. He would have forged his links, and become a Maester in the north. But your house started a war with the Starks, and he left Old Town. Lord Tywine thought the 7 kingdoms orbited around him. But orbits can shift, as Archmaester Violin claims. Snow can wipe out an entire generation of highborn in the Westerlands. Oberyn said. That was true. The North had captured every Cricket Hall. None of Lord Roland's sons were wedded. The Leffords, the Lydons, the Brakeses, the Serrets, there might be a few children under 5 back in their castles but the Westerlands would suffer a huge loss if the prisoners were killed. Tyrion shuddered at the thought. Strange, isn't it? To live in fear and pray for mercy from your enemies. That's what House Lannister has done to their bannermen. Oberyn said. Tyrion could not disagree. The wailing and weeping of women resounded through the godswood of the Red Keep. Tales of the storming of the twins had spread like wildfire through the city. Margaery kept her calm but her companions and ladies were painfully aware that House Stark marched the prisoners from the Reach north the past fortnight. Owen Fossoe waited with the other retainers as Mace held court over whatever tidbits of information the Tyrells could gather. Why are you crying? Lady Olenna, munching on crackers and cheese. It is my Alyn. He was so brave and eager to go to war. Eleanor said, wiping her red eyes. And now, he might lose a hand, or a foot, or even have his eyes gouged out. Owen shook his head. He was fond of Eleanor but she certainly enjoyed her drama. A homely pox-scarred woman walked forward, completely out of breath. Septa Hysterica, who had been assigned by the faith to the Tyrells, curtsied to Lady Olenna. I have heard a foul tale from the Holy Brothers but it is too depraved for tender young ears. Maidens should not hear such horrid things. The Queen of Thorns rolled her eyes. Well, they certainly won't leave now. Tell us the story. Hysterica silently appealed to young Lady Bulwer, Alla and Mega Tyrell. The 3 girls had no interest in covering their ears. Snow accused Walder and his sons of rape. He cut off their cocks, one by one, with a sharp knife in front of the prisoners. And then he burned them all. Lord Mace turned pale and the guards shuddered. Even Owen felt a bit green. Luckily, Olenna was made of sterner stuff. All their cocks. Lord Walder has dozens and dozens of sons. It would take a long time. And why would anybody touch Walder for his cock? I would not do it for all the wine in the Arbor or the gold in Casterly Rock. Eleanor cried again. What if he cuts off Alyn's? If Snow snips Alyn, then you will find another betrothal. Men are not good for much, but without a cock, it is even less. Olenna said. Grandmother. Margaery said. Jon Snow is a monster. Mace Tyrell cried. Imagine a man who would cut off your bollocks. Olenna ignored her son. Owen, what do you think? Would Jon castrate Walder Frey? If the phrase hurt his sisters, certainly. But he would have a reason, my lady. The punishment would fit the crime. We need to save our bannermen from being burned alive or being unmanned. Do you think Snow wants more gold for our lords? Margaery asked. I will write to the twins, Lady Margaery. But a raven will take a day and a night, perhaps longer. If Snow is executing prisoners, then it may get there too late. But I do not think he will hurt our men. He will not harm squires and children. Snow is a kinder man than he seems. Owen replied. Jon preferred working outside. Sunlight and fresh air was better for Robb. The wolves enjoyed the grass, the trees and the trident more than the cramped castle. Chet had taken Ghost south on a mission but the Black Tom was at his side. He tapped the chisel into the bronze strip with a small jewel hammer, engraving a rune of the first men. Lord Snow. Sir Michael escorted a tall handsome man with dark hair and clever eyes. Am I to be burned alive then? Baylor Hightower asked, looking at the large pile of oak and ash branches with twigs scattered on top. We saw your boys building this from the castle. That is a funeral pyre, sir. If I wanted to kill a prisoner, I would do it more quickly. Have a seat. A serving wench set out 2 plates, each with a soft-boiled egg, a rasher of bacon, a wedge of cheese and fresh-baked bread. Do you take ale or wine? Ale. Baylor Hightower broke the egg yolk over the hot bread and took a bite. The knight smiled. I have eaten your bread. I take it you won't kill me today. John poured out 2 cups of ale. I would prefer not to kill anyone. You killed plenty of Freys. What do you plan for us or the Lannister men? What do you think? I will not beg for my life, Lord Snow. I have an heir at the Hightower, a second son, and 2 daughters. Thankfully, they had the wisdom to stay in Old Town. I have brothers and sisters who will keep my house strong. I wish to live, my lord, but I accept my fate. Baylor Bright Smiles' reputation was well deserved. He had the sanctity of a man at peace with himself. You will not have to beg, sir. Do you recall the peace talks at Harrenhal? The North wanted Sansa Stark returned and peace for the Riverlands. Robb Stark insisted that there be no reprisals, no hostages, or stripping of lands and titles. Baylor said. We have Sansa Stark now. But we still want peace for the Riverlands. John said. Can the Reach promise that? Baylor's eyes popped open in surprise. You would be satisfied with those terms, even after the God's Eye and the twins. I plan to return north. There are Ironborn raiders at Sea Dragon Point and the Stony Shore. And our bannermen need to rest. Can your lords guarantee a truce? Then you would let us go. Baylor's mouth gaped slightly as John nodded. The knight thought for a while. The question is how vengeful the Iron Throne will be. The Tyrells were happy to accept the deal at Harrenhal, it was Baelish and Joffrey that refused. I do not think they will allow the Tullys to remain Lord Paramount, after Tywine promised Riverrun to another. But I doubt that the throne will attaint the other houses. They may want hostages, though. I will give you terms for your release. I want peace, no raiding, no looting, an end to all fighting. The Rivermen need time to rebuild, so no levies or taxes for 5 years. Baylor frowned at the last demand. Kings are eager to extract gold and gifts from their vassals. A year of pillaging should be enough. Tywine's men burnt and sacked much of the Riverlands. The villagers need a good harvest to survive through the winter. John said. I certainly agree with you, Lord Snow. And I know that Sir Garland, Lady Margaery and Olenna do not want war. What would you have me do? Speak to the other lords. Sound them out on this offer. I want their word that they will seek no punishments for the Riverlords and that they will protect the small folk. John said. I shall but. Baylor hesitated. Lord Snow, this does not settle the matter. Tywine Lannister will not forget his humiliation. And Joffrey, I was only in the Crown Lands for a short time but they say nothing good. He is not a kind or intelligent boy, and will be a poor and cruel king. He will carry a grudge against House Stark to his deathbed. We do not like him either. I will come south again, sir. And next time, my army will be larger and better equipped. John said. Baylor finished the meal quickly. Permission to speak freely, Snow. John nodded. My house is one of the greatest in the 7 kingdoms. With Old Town, we are as rich as the Tyrells. We can muster 15,000 swords, and our own fleet of ships. We have influence in the Citadel and the Faith. We have a long and proud history. Yet for 150 years, the Hightowers have not played the Game of Thrones. Do you know why? Of course. Otto Hightower was Hand of the King in the Dance of the Dragons. My great-great-uncle nearly destroyed our house. He married his daughter to King Viserys and schemed to get his grandchildren on the Iron Throne. It led to a terrible and bloody war. Otto lost his head, the Lord of the Hightower was killed in battle, and his sons, grandsons, and great-grandsons all died in the war. His daughter went mad before she passed 2 years later. And what is the point of the story, Sir Baylor? John said. Power has a price. The Iron Throne is a poisoned chalice. Those who try to rise too high often fall, and their house suffers from their ambition. Baylor said. You should tell that to the Tyrells. John said. I am not Otto Hightower, sir. And my enemies do not have dragons. Neither Rob or I hunger for power. We bear no anger to Lady Margaery. But I doubt that Joffrey's reign will last long. Sir Baylor was true to his word. The Stark guards had escorted the knight to the solar at the Twins. 2 Wintertown boys hid in an alcove nearby, and eavesdropped. The knight exerted a great deal of influence on the Reachmen. After the initial shock of the offer, the other lords and knights were eager to hear the full details. More importantly, none of the highborn, not even the truculent Randall Tarly, had any desire for revenge against the Rivermen. Most only wanted to return home. There was no love for Joffrey Baratheon in the Reach. That afternoon, Jon spoke with his sisters. Sansa expressed her worries, but Arya was eager to return to Winterfell. And both were glad that their lady mother would receive the honors due to a Tully of Riverrun. They gathered the commanders of both the Northern Army and the Riverlords in the Great Hall of the Eastern Castle. Jon stood with Arya and Sansa, and flanked by Sandor Clegane, the Vale Knights and Brian. Sir Baylor attended as well as Lord Fossoe and Tarly. There was no need to mince words. We are going north to Winterfell. But, what of the Riverlands? We cannot defend our lands against the Iron Throne. Clement Piper said aghast. Sir Baylor spoke. We will talk to the Tyrells. The Reach does not want any more fighting in the Riverlands. In King's Landing, the Tyrell army is larger than the Lannister forces. Tywine is not reckless enough to send his army away for no profit. Lord Tywine ordered Amory Lorque, Vargo Hoat and Gregor Clegane to raid the lands around Trident. All 3 are dead and their men slain or scattered. Good riddance. Tarly spat. I have given Sir Baylor my terms. No raids into the Riverlands. No hostages and no stripping of titles. Jon said. How will they force us to give hostages when we have so many prisoners from the Westerlands? Jon Osbracken said. Jon shook his head and the Riverlords suddenly realized their true predicament. You are going to release our prisoners. Even the Lannister men. Bracken cried. They are not your prisoners, Lord Jon O's. The army is returning north. We have been gone for too long. Second, Lord Edmure is a bannerman to House Stark. He swore to follow my lead. And third, the prisoners belong to Winterfell. This is my decision. Jon looked about the room. We are not jailers. We do not threaten to hang men to force their surrender. I did that at the Tooth only to ensure supply lines. Your bastard was locked up at the Twins, Lord Bracken. And your son, Lord Mallister. Do you want that for others? That they grow old in a dungeon? The war in the Riverlands is over. But what will happen to us? Tytos asked. It is likely that House Tully is attainted. And the rest of you will have to bow and scrape. But that will not last. Jon said. Lords know, I could hold Riverrun for 2 years with a few hundred men and a few Lannister hostages. The Blackfish said. And what kind of life would that be? The Iron Throne would lay siege with thousands of men. The Lannisters would pillage your lands and kill your small folk. Sir Brynden, you could hold Riverrun, but at what price? 2 more years of war. Jon said. The most defensive part of the Riverlands is here. From the Twins to the Neck and Moat Caitlin. The North will not cede this area. Sir Brynden, you will hold the Twins for the Starks. Jon addressed the Rivermen directly. My lords, if you wish safety, I welcome you to the North. There, House Stark can protect you from enemies. But if you do not go north, know this. The wolves will come south again. I cannot say when, but our forces will recover and we will return, stronger than before. Ricard Karstark stood up. Lords know, if we retreat, will they say that we were afraid to fight? Will the Lannisters and their lackeys call us cowards? Jon shrugged. How much do the words of liars matter? We have won 8 battles in the past year. Men's weapons grow dull and their ardor for combat dampens. No kingdom benefits from prolonged warfare. In war, the goal is victory, not lengthy campaigns. Lord Snow, I was born in Raventree Hall and I will be buried there under the dead weirwood. I will not abandon my home, but my sons, Hose and Ben, will go north. If the lions attack me, I ask that you avenge me. Tytos said. Lord Blackwood speaks well. I will keep Mark home but send Lewis to Winterfell. Clement Piper cried. Lady Went, you are welcome to stay with the Starks. Lord Lyman, come north. I will teach you how to rule. When you are older, you will hold Deary again. John said. The little lord gulped but agreed, as did Shelowent. The Mallisters would stay home at Seaguard, but others decided to send their heirs. Lord John Ose's bastard and 2 of his daughters would come to Winterfell. The Vances would send a few sons, and the 2 orphans of House Deddings, the son and daughter of House Blantree, and the youngest Shawnee boy would go north. Young Limond Goodbrook spoke up. Lord Snow, I would like to accompany Ed Muir, wherever he goes. It is your choice, Lord Ed Muir. You may stay at the Twins, if you wish. You are welcome in the north, of course. I would counsel you against Riverrun. It is a strong castle, but it would not be difficult to trap you there. John said. Ed Muir hesitated for a bit. I have no good memories of the Twins. Perhaps White Harbor, Roslyn might like to see a true city. Could I take her sisters with me? Willie's Mondalis jug-like ears reddened. You are welcome, my lord. But the phrase. John interrupted. I will decide what happens to the phrase tonight, before the feast. And after that, we honor our dead. John kept Sir Baelor behind after the other lords had left. They had a pleasant chat about the citadel and how Elaine, Baelor's nephew, got his yellow gold link. The knight invited him to visit the High Tower. Before he could respond, Arya brought Lady Smallwood back to the hall. John, this is Lady Ravler. Arya said. Charmed. And this is Sir Baelor Hightower, Lord Lytton's heir. John and the knight bowed. Then the ever-gracious Baelor kissed the hand of the flustered noblewoman with aplomb. Lady Ravler holds Acorn Hall for the Vances. But the phrase killed her husband, Lord Theomar, and she and her daughter are all alone. Arya blurted out. I am sorry for your loss, the Reach Knight said. Sir Baelor, I wish to ask for a boon. John said. When the war began, Lady Ravler sent her daughter to Old Town. I want to make certain she is safe and that Acorn Hall will not fall. With the death of the Lord and his knights, House Smallwood does not have many men. Your daughter is in Old Town, my lady. Yes, sir. She is with my grand-aunt in a mother house near the Starry September. But she doesn't want to be a septa, I hope. Sir Baelor smiled. Ravler shook her head no. My Caroline is a lovely dancer. She sings beautifully as well. She is 2 years older than Lady Arya. Then I have a solution, my lady. I have half a dozen nephews eligible to wed. There are 5 houses sworn to mine, Beesbury, Bulwer, Costain, Kewy and Mullador. If she wishes, House Hightower will ensure that Lady Caroline marries well. I will send my swords to Acorn Hall for your protection. You need not worry. Thank you, my lord. Lady Smallwood beamed. Thank the Starks, my lady. They demanded that the Riverlands be protected. The Reach will make sure that happens, regardless what the Iron Throne decrees. We would much rather fight off bandits than face the North again in battle. Ghost had returned from 7 Streams. Chet jumped down from the wagon driven by grim men. Several closed coffins, simple wooden boxes, rested in the back. The sweet rushes strewn over the pine slats could not cover the stench of the dead. The undertaker bowed as John held his nose, braving the awful smell. He opened the lid to see the gruesome decomposed body of Talisa Magi. The skin, the flesh, the hair, all of it had rotted away on the bloated corpse. Who are the others? John said. Sir Roland Wainwood. Donal Locke. Robin Flint. Sir Elbert Belmore. The bodies are in bad shape, Maester, even worse than Lady Talisa. Chet said. After 14 days, they were lucky to find this much. The corpses have already rotted. There is not much to be done. Paint their sigils on the coffin. For Lady Talisa, that will be a grey dire wolf on a field of white. Bring them north of the castle. The Wintertown boys nodded and left. Ghost stayed and John felt comfort in the great wolf. It was time to deal with the phrase. The great hall went quiet when John entered. The prisoners had been gathered and news had spread of the deal with Baylor Hightower. The reachmen were relieved, the Westerman puzzled, and the phrase frightened. Then again, he had burned dozens of frays yesterday. Weasels were afraid of fire. "Bring the remaining free males before me," John announced. The Stark guards rounded them up. Only a few with more than 10 name days survived the purge: Stephen, Pawin and Oliver, Stefan, son of Walton and Alisander, son of Simond. The skinny fox-faced lad was the oldest of the rest, and there were several under the age of 5. The toddlers sobbed as they were ripped from the arms of their mothers. "Lord Snow, what about these ones?" Sir Alyn prodded the 2 sons of Imanfrey. Cleos and Shan looked fearfully at their uncle, Sir Kevan. John shook his head no. "Sir Stephen." The Free Knight raised his tired old eyes. "Do you swear that you had no knowledge of Lothar's plans?" "I did not, Lord Snow. Ryman and Lothar knew you saved my life. I would have informed you of any plot against Rob. I beg that my grandsons, Stefan and Brian Free, be spared." "Denied, sir. I promised to end the line of Walder Free. But you have served me well, like Pawin and Oliver. This is my judgment. The name Walder Free will disappear from history. You will take a new last name, of the Crossing." John said. "So, I will be Sir Stephen of the Crossing?" the gobsmacked man asked. "It is quite a mouthful. I don't want to hear your father's name ever again." "But what will I do, my lord? Where will I go?" Sir Stephen was older than anyone in the hall. Hoster Tully had shriveled away from old age 2 moons ago, but he was younger than Stephen. "I can give you a horse, armor, and weapons. You are free to leave the Riverlands." "For what?" "I am too old to be a hedge knight. I could go to the wall, but then who will take care of my grandsons and granddaughters?" "Very well, sir. You can serve House Stark and erase the taint of the treachery by your actions. In return, I promise a home and hearth. And that offer applies to your kin," John said. Loud gasps rang through the hall. Sir Stephen pushed for more. "I would accept, my lord, but what of my sisters, my nieces and their children?" "Make your vows, sir." "I have never broken promises to a bannerman," John said. They swore the oaths, not as Freys but under their new family name. Stephen, Pawin, Oliver and half a dozen more. Mothers urged their young sons to speak louder, but the children tripped over the words of the Crossing. It would take time to get used to that name. John waited until the hall was silent once again. Sir Michael Redfort. The young Vale Knight stood up and walked forward. He knelt, placing his sword on the ground. "Sir Michael, you saved my brother's life at 7 Streams. You fought bravely at the God's Eye and helped me take the twins. For that, I would honor you. House Bolton is extinct now. I would make you Castellan of the Dread Fort and rule over those lands." John said. "My lord, that is far too generous." Sir Michael gasped. And it was. The lands of the Dread Fort stretched from the lonely hills to the Hornwood. The fortress sat on the upper waters of the Weeping River and was a few days' ride to the headwaters of the White Knife on the west and the Shivering Sea on the east. House Bolton's wealth was as great as any Stark bannerman. "Sansa Stark," John called. His sister rose and faced him. "Sir Michael, you are Castellan. You hold the Bolton lands in trust. But my sister will award fiefs to those who serve House Stark. The Vale Knights, the highborn driven from the Riverlands, and the Freys. Lady Sansa will take charge of the free women. Sansa will see to their positions, marriages and futures, and dower them with land and gold. Only those loyal to Winterfell will be rewarded." Sansa curtsied. "It is a great honor." John grimaced. "It is a great deal of work, and it will be enormous trouble. But I trust you to do this well. Sir Michael, when my sister is finished, your family will rule the largest hold fast in those domains. You can create a new sigil for your house." "Thank you, my lord. I promise before the old gods and the new, to always be your man. My descendants will honor that vow to the end of days." Sir Michael said fervently. "Not to be my man. To be a Stark man. To be loyal to the North. Jon corrected Michael. The Vale Knight swore his oath again. And to the North, I say this. You have fought and bled for Winterfell. Chet, bring out the treasure. The Wintertown boys heaped the plunder high at Jon's feet, chests of gold and silver coins, casks of gems, bolts of silks, yards of silver and gold braid, jeweled cups, and ingots of precious metal. Jon held up a fistful of coins. Behold, the spoils of war. But gold produces nothing. It is pretty to look at, but it will not feed a man through winter. We will take this treasure and transform the North. We will build ships and harbors, roads and bridges. We will trade timber, fur, honey and iron with Essos and connect the salt spear with the bite. The gold will be shared by all of us, to make certain that the North will have meat and mead at our tables. The old men will not have to die in the ice and snow. And when we are strong again, we will go south. When will that be, Snow? The great Jon yelled. When will we make the lions tremble again? When Robb has recovered. When our army's numbers swell. And when we can wage war on swift wings. Give me time, and we will destroy our enemies. Jon answered. They lit the fireboat at dusk. Catelyn Stark's body had been embalmed by Maester Vimen and Brenneat, the organs removed and placed into 7 clay jars lying at her feet. The vessel was a simple wooden boat, without sails or oars. Lady Catelyn's body had been cleaned and washed, and the undertaker had done his best to stitch the throat and smooth the torn skin. A grey cloak of House Stark was spread underneath her, and she was covered in thick woolen blankets of blue and red. Roslyn's offer of a gown of blue silk had been rejected. Neither Arya or Sansa would let their lady mother be buried with any trace of the twins. Lord Hoster was laid to rest clad in shining silver plate armor, a blue and red surcoat and a greedhelm with the crest of a tully trout. A wooden sword, mail gauntlets, a hunting horn, and a great oak shield accompanied Hoster to his final rest. Lady Catelyn only had a small banner of Lady knit hastily by Sansa, but an entire army paid their respects. Arya and Sansa stood on the bridge with Edmure and Brynden, and Jon watched from the shoreline next to Robb and the dire wolves. Lords from the north, the Reach, the Riverlands, and the Westerlands bowed their heads to the flaming ship. Stark men saluted from both sides of the river. The straw and wood already caught fire. As the funeral boat passed the crossing, Sansa and Arya dropped 2 torches from the bridge. There would be no flame arrows or burning sails. The Green Fork slowed down at twilight, and the boat lingered, as if the trident wished to offer a gentle embrace to Lady Catelyn. The burning boat receded into the distance, and the remains would sink down in the riverbed, where the lords and ladies of House Tully rested in death. Lady Arya, and Lady Sansa. I am sorry for your loss. I heard that your lady mother died bravely, fighting for her house. Sir Baelor said, paying condolences for the Reachmen. I would rather that my sister be alive, sir. Edmure Tully said. He glared at Sir Kevan, Lord Crickehall, and Lord Brax, who stood awkwardly, waiting their turn. Thank you for your kind words, sir. Sansa said. The Reachmen bowed and walked away. Why are they here? Edmure hissed. The Lannisters invaded the Riverlands. They should be still locked up in the dungeons. My brother released them. Sansa said calmly. Let it be, Edmure. This is not the time nor place. We are saying goodbye to those that we lost. The Blackfish said. They burned Talisa Magai at the western shore, near the broken bridge. A faint crescent moon had risen in the sky and the stars were out. Bonfires lit the shoreline, and the Wintertown boys dragged out a few barrels of ale and men drank out of wineskins. Robb's honor guard were out in force, as were the northern lords and their heirs. The great Jon sang northern songs in his deep bass rumble, the wolves in the hill and the winter maid. The Mormont ladies toasted the fallen healer, and the army paid tribute to those slain at Seven Streams. They could not salvage all the bodies from the trident, but Jon asked the lords and heirs for names of the dead. The Wintertown boys carved them into rocks which were piled into a great cairn. And in front of the pile, Jon erected a stone altar, and inscribed 5 words, Winter came for House Free. After Jon collected the ashes of Talisa and her unborn babe, they burned the other bodies, Sir Roland, Sir Elbert, Donal Locke, Robin Flint, Owen Norrie. The sorrow and anger faded. Stories and memories were shared about the departed, not just the bodies recovered from the Trident but everyone who had fought and died defending the Riverlands. Servants carried out giant trays of whole roasted chickens doused with a rich creamy giblet gravy. The Hound grabbed an entire plate. Simpler fare, pickled pig's feet, cold ham, and fried sausages, were shared at the bonfires. More barrels of ale and wine emerged from the castle. The festive mood stopped when John rose to speak. "We have one more to honor." He took out a circlet of bronze and black. 9 iron spikes wrought in the shape of longswords were mounted on the ring of hammered bronze. He had forged it that morning. "Lord Snow, what is that?" the Blackfish asked. "A crown of winter. The Stark kings of old wore a sword crown until the dragons came. You offered to name Robb, king in the north. He refused, but Grey Wind is still a king among wolves." John placed the circlet on the direwolf's head. John and a few Winterfell guards hefted the open casket and placed it on top of the oak, ash and pine branches. The other men stepped away, leaving only John and Robb close to the funeral pyre. The straw quickly caught fire from a torch, the burning wood crackled and popped, and the flames rose high into the night. Ghost and Nymeria emerged from the darkness, leading a large pack of grey wolves. The direwolves circled the pyre, paying homage to their brother. Arya and Sansa came forward, and joined hands with John. The inferno consumed the casket, and Grey Wind melted into ashes. And as the flames carried the direwolf's spirit to the afterlife, Robb Stark gasped and woke. He sat up with a shiver, to the shock of everyone watching. Sansa ran sobbing to her brother and Arya followed. John took the crown of winter from the fire. Robb looked at the remains of his direwolf. "Talisa." John shook his head no. The Lord of Winterfell closed his eyes and wept. Sansa was surrounded by free ladies who hung on her every word. She did not know half their names, or how they were related, or who their mothers were. Luckily, the Freys did not care. They were more focused on finding husbands and homes. "How is your brother, Robb?" Roslyn Tully, the only lady with a husband, asked. At the twins, those who had been married were all widows. "Tired and weak from his ordeal. He will need time to heal," Sansa said. "Lady Sansa, what happens now?" a worried blonde woman asked. This was Lothar's wife with the 4 young daughters, one still an infant. "The army marches soon. In a moon's time, we should reach Winterfell. But what will happen to us?" the woman asked anxiously. "You will come north. It will take time to divide the Bolton lands, and I must speak to my brothers about that. Rooms will be found for your families in the castle and Wintertown. You will be treated well." John does not break his word. "But is Snow still in charge? Won't Lord Stark strip his half-brother of power?" The Free who spoke was beautiful but had a sharp tongue and greedy eyes. Roslyn responded sharply. "You cannot say such things, fair Walder. Please forgive us, Lady Sansa. At the twins, our brothers, half-brothers and nephews jockeyed constantly for Lord Walder's favor. Promises were made, then broken, and often replaced with threats. Things were never what they seemed." The twins sounded miserable. Sansa felt a twinge of guilt over her petty feuds with Arya, but any sisterly rivalry vanished after King's Landing. Lady might be dead, but Sansa had rejoined the pack. "Winterfell is different. All my brothers trust each other." In his will, Robb stated that in case of his death or injury, John would command the north. "Robb will recover, but he is not ready to lead. My brothers are united. They have always been loyal to each other. So Lord Snow really will give us lands and gold for marriages." Fat Walder squeaked. The free women still could not believe their change in fortune. "Those marriages will be made to benefit the north. And you must be faithful to House Stark. If you are not, I will tell John. He will deal with any treachery." Arya clung to the great she-wolf, her head resting on the dark grey fur around the massive neck. Nymeria would have preferred to run under the stars and moon, and gorge on the flesh of sheep and cows, but the wolf stayed still, comforting her bondmate. Did she know, Arya wondered. Ciri O'Forel taught her many lessons. There were simple ones on how to hold a sword, how to lunge and parry. There were strange ones on the catching of cats, balancing on one foot, and walking on top of short wooden poles. But the most valuable lesson was the day they arrested Ned Stark and her dancing instructor sacrificed himself to let her escape. Ciri O'Forel had said the most important thing was the seeing. The heart might lie and the head could play tricks, but the eyes see true. Arya had not forgotten the lesson. That night, when everyone gawked and gaped at Robb's return, Jon had taken the crown of winter from Grey Wind's head. The crown was burning, the yellow bronze band and black iron spikes glowing from the heat. Jon held the circlet for only a short moment while Arya and Sansa hugged Robb. Amidst the excitement, neither the Northman nor the other highborn noticed the sleight of hand. But Arya saw. Her brother did not burn. Only one family had no fear of fire, and they were not Starks. Jon placed the two urns holding the remains of Talisa, her child, and Grey Wind next to the bed. Robb had fallen into a deep slumber, drained, weary, and slightly befuddled. His brother was happy to see Sansa and Arya but mourned deeply. Robb would get better, and the ashes would be buried in the crypts of Winterfell, where they belonged. Jon passed several sets of guards, Sir Michael and Sir Andrew of the Vale, Patrek Mallister and Wendell Marndaly of the Battle Companions, and Sir Alyn of Winterfell. They were all good men and eager to defend the Lord of Winterfell. Robb's return was celebrated as a blessing from the gods, although some credited the Seven and others the old gods of the north. Jon did not care. That argument could be left to the Septons. The northern army would depart for the King's Road in a few days. There is a great deal to do, ravens to send, supply lines to organize, and equipment to transport. Crossing the neck was difficult because it was impossible to forage in a swamp. The Barrowlands, dusty wind-swept plains, were not much better. The north needed a fleet for trade and transport. And with a canal connecting the Fever River to the Bight, Moat Cailin would boom. House Stark would need a capable and loyal lord for that castle. Maester. Chet called out from the rookery. Satin is coming north. He has destroyed the blast furnace on your orders. That was a pity, but furnaces could be rebuilt. Due to cost, steel was used only in the finest weapons and armor. But that would change in the north. My mother and the other small folk are also traveling with him. Jerry said. They will be welcomed in Wintertown. The town will grow greatly once we build roads to the White Knife. What of the riverboats? When will they reach the Twins? Jon said. In 2 days. The Green Fork is harder to sail upstream. But the return trip to Harroway will be quick. Chet said. That would be the first stop. From Harroway, they could choose to take the Red Fork to the Westerlands, or ride down to the Rose Road. The riverboats would continue to Solpants, where the ex-prisoners would find passage to King's Landing with a special cargo, the heads and hands of more than 50 Freys. Jon hoped the chest would be opened before the Lannisters in the throne room of the Red Keep. There was one more prize to add. Snow. Are you here to kill us all? His lusty voice could be heard through the great hall, to the dismay of the other Lannisters. The ladies soothed the squires, who had lost any appetite for glory in war. If I wanted to do that, why would I free you first, sir? Jon said, curious about the man's logic. Bellowing came more easily than thinking for the strong boar. Sir Lyle believes that you plan to murder us before we reach King's Landing. Sir Kevan said. I am not Tywin Lannister. Lady Lefford, do you remember what I said at your castle? The pretty heir to the Golden Tooth shook her head. Tybalt Marbrand answered. You swore that if the Westerlands provided supplies, no prisoners would be harmed. And when the war ended, the prisoners would be returned, safe and sound. The war in the Riverlands is over. I will honor my vow. So, you really will let us go? The strong boar asked, dumbfounded. Yes, but I have one more thing. Jon opened a bag and pulled out an enormous head. Gregor Clegane's brutish eyes stared out from a ruined face, charred black by fire. I burned the mountain alive and chopped him up. I will do worse to anyone who attacks the Riverlands again. The Westerman knights and lords were silent. The women looked away. The mountain's head will be sent to Oberyn Martell. But the Freys belong to House Lannister. Jon walked away. He departed the castle and lay under the stars, with Balerion and Ghost at his side. He closed his eyes and drifted off to sleep. Like so many nights, Jon Snow dreamed of dragons. The end.